Steinley.
I'm here.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
Great. Yes, so Chair Bodnar wasn't able to attend tonight, so I'll be chairing the meeting, which is good practice for next year. And we do have a quorum. So opening up the meeting, I'd like to ask, since I do see members of the public on, if there are any comments from the public dealing with any items, addressing any items that are not on the agenda that we are not going to be acting on. And if you do, Guido, remind me, how do you know? Do they raise a hand and you can see them?
Usually people will identify themselves.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see that anybody's asked to speak on an item not on the agenda.
Okay,
So,
well, going once, going twice, unmute yourself if you are, and okay, so I guess we'll close that item. And I see that instead of doing our consent calendar first, we are going to look at the study session first, which is a study session that is under SB 3330 project review, where the applicant receives preliminary feedback from the community and the Planning Commission. These are not actionable items for us tonight, only for the applicant to be receiving constructive feedback for their projects. And the project is PPR 21-004, Emmerich McDonald at 349 First Street. Los Altos, of course, is a 4-story residential condominium with 12 units, including 2 moderate BMRs and 1 level of ground level parking. And I think, Sean, you are the planner that will be introducing this tonight.
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Good evening, Vice Chair Doran and Commissioners. My name is Sean Gallegos. I am an Associate Planner with the Planning Division. The project, screen's not moving. There we go. The project before you tonight is a 4-story, or the preliminary SB 330 project before you tonight is a 4-story residential condominium building with 12 units, including 2 moderate income BMR units. In addition, the project will have 1 level of ground level parking for 6 parking spaces and a lift system for 9 parking spaces. In regards to types of application, the project will require a multifamily design review, a tentative map, and environmental review. In addition, the project will be pursuing a density bonus. At this stage, they are indicating they're pursuing a density bonus, which would qualify for 1 concession. The concession is for height. Waivers are requested to reduce the front yard setback from 10 feet to 2 feet and the rear yard setback from 10 to 2. In addition, the CDR3 requires that loading and unloading for deliveries occur at the rear of the site along the alley. The proposed plans do not show compliance with the standard. If the applicant is unable to comply with this requirement, they may be pursuing a waiver for the loading area along the alleyway. An applicant may request the waiver of an unlimited number of development standards that would physically preclude the construction of the project with the density bonus, incentives, or concessions to which the development is entitled under the density bonus regulations. The property is located in the CDR3 zoning district, commercial, and the site is 7,100 square feet in size. It's currently used by an approximately 3,000 square foot commercial building, which will be demolished for this project. The subject site is zoned commercial downtown multifamily. Immediately behind it is commercial downtown, and across the street is CRS district. The California Senate Bill 330, as the commissioners are aware, is the Housing Crisis Act of 2019. It has 2 key phases, a pre-application phase and a formal submittal phase. We are currently in the pre-application phase. The purpose of the pre-applicant phase is to collect specific site and project information in order to determine the zoning, design, subdivision, fee requirements that will apply to the housing development project through the review and entitlement process. During the formal phase, the city is only allowed to require 5 public meetings when the applicant formally submits, and we would need to approve or deny the project based on objective standards at the time of submittal. As a result of the maximum number of meetings of 5, the Complete Streets Commission and the Planning Commission will be conducting a joint meeting when a formal submittal is submitted. Let me see. The city attorney is available to address more detailed questions regarding SB 330. And I will go to the next one for you. Again, this just kind of goes over a little bit more in regards to submittal of the pre-applicant phase. I've somewhat covered that. I'll go to the next slide. In regards to the current project, pre-submittal application, there was a community meeting that was held for the project on September 2nd. There were 3 speakers in attendance at the meeting. The comments at the meeting were related to parking reduction in relation to the total 17 spaces, the concerns regarding design, height, landscaping, and bulk. Complete Streets Commission meeting was held on September 29th. There were no public speakers. The commission comments were very broad. They raised concerns regarding potential impacts of overflow parking. They wish to understand the cumulative impact of parking on public parking on the street. They wanted to understand accessibility to trash. The trash room, which I'll show you, is located at the rear of the building. The need to understand the pathway for bicycles. The Complete Streets supported an opportunity to slow down traffic with bulb outs at the corner. The bulb out alternative is not in the plan set, but it was an alternative that the applicant proposed at the meeting as a potential option. A focused traffic analysis, they advised, was required. That the impact of the building, they were concerned with the potential impact of this building on the new potential historic site at 347 First Street, which is the American Legion Hall. They were also worried with the ham radio antenna at 347 First, which is along the tower feature on the left side of the building. They wanted the project applicant to provide a draft development checklist. They wanted the applicant to increase the storage, including for bicycles. They wanted the applicant to provide alley widening, and they wanted the city to consider whether permitted parking could be proposed along frontages to reduce the potential impact of overflow parking from the site. Again, currently the site is has a 3,000 square foot building. There is 1 driveway on Whitney Street leading to 14 on-grade parking spaces. Again, this is at the corner of First Street and Whitney. The on-site circulation includes a driveway again on Whitney Street in roughly the same location as the existing driveway. Under the provisions, the applicant is entitled under the density bonus regulations to request a reduced parking standard, which would allow for a reduction down to 17 parking spaces. As indicated previously, trash is located along the back of the structure. It does convey 8, I should correct myself, as 8 parking spaces at grade, and then this reflects 9 spaces here along the back side of the building. The closest bus stop is located approximately 0.2 miles from the site at Lyle and San Antonio. The local VTA Route 40 provides service from Mountain View to Foothill College. There are Class 2 bicycle lanes on San Antonio with access off of Whitney and 2nd or off of First Street. As recommended by VTA standards, the project is required to provide a minimum of a Class 1 bike locker for every 3 units and a Class 2 bicycle rack for every 15 units. As reflected in the drawings on this floor plan, the applicant did not provide those standards. The city does expect at time of formal submittal that they will comply with the VTA bicycle standards. In addition, if approved by council, the applicant will be required to improve the sidewalks along First and Whitney to create a more accessible path of travel to comply with the Americans with Disability Act. At the ground floor level, the primary entry is along First Street with a live workspace located along the frontage to the right of the primary entry. Again, 17 spaces and storage or trash room along the back with mechanical also along the back alley. This provides a cut sheet. It's on sheet A40. It provides an example of the parking spaces plus the lift system, which will provide for a 3-level lift system. This is a elevation drawing. The upper one is the front is the elevation facing First Street. The left side of the elevation is the elevator and stairwell tower. The right elevation is along Whitney, or the elevation on the bottom is the right elevation or exterior side elevation. It is facing Whitney. In the center is the entrance to the garage. The upper elevation is the rear elevation, is the alley facing elevation. And the lower elevation is the elevation immediately adjacent to 347 First, the American Legion Hall. To the right of the lower elevation, again, is the tower feature, which is the elevator and stairwell element. This concludes staff's presentation, unless there are any questions. Thank you.
I have one. In reviewing my packet, I didn't see that you had included the comments from the public that were held that you went through a list of.
One second. Yes, I'm sorry. I did. I did not have the draft minutes from the Complete Streets Commission, and I apologize for not providing my personal or draft draft notes that I had. I can always provide those to the commissioners also.
I would certainly like to see the street commissioner. You had a list of 10 or 12 items, whatever there was, that listed each one of the dislikes by the public. I certainly would like to see those.
Okay, I could do that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments for the staff? Would it be helpful to the commissioners if staff left the colored rendering on the slide up on the screen as we discuss it?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Shelley, I have a quick question actually for Jolie, not for Sean, except to say, Sean, very good report, very good presentation. Thank you.
Right, go ahead.
And Jolie, this is not really, this is a question that's going to come up. What's the current relationship between our density bonus law and the changes to the state law? Do we apply our law? Do we apply the state law? How are we doing that?
You're on mute, Julie.
Sorry. Oh, I am.
You
Does it
were.
work now?
Yes.
You're no.
Okay. We have a density bonus ordinance, and now I'm frozen. Can you?
We can hear you, Jolie.
You
Yeah.
can? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we have a density bonus ordinance, but we comply with the state density bonus. And how we figure that out, but we would be the new laws, nothing, SB 330 really didn't change the state density bonus calculation and waivers and incentives, as far as I know.
Well, I know that, for example, the maximum went from 35% to 50%. That's right. I mean, there were some changes and some tweaks to the law. The basic structure didn't change.
Are you talking about 2021 or 2022?
I guess that's my question.
This project has been, this would be under the SB 330 as of 2021, correct, Guido?
Yeah, I think what the commissioner is asking, Jolie, is that there have been some changes to density bonus law that I believe you and myself and the deputy city attorney Eric have spoken about, but those are more related to the percentages for increased density, but I do not believe that that's being triggered for this project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're talking about the super density for those
Yeah.
projects. Yeah,
Yeah.
like when I don't think they've requested that. And when you're so far from a transit stop and all of that, where you can get the
Yeah.
increases. And Commissioner Steinle, I don't believe this applicant has asked for that or triggered it.
No, that's what I was saying, is it really didn't have much to do with this project. It's just a question that came to my mind because this is something that we sort of had gotten used to, and now we have to get used to a different version of it. And so this is the first project that's come up since that change. And so I was wondering if that had any particular influence at any point in here. And I understand it probably didn't. So that's
No,
fine.
it didn't. They're just coming under the regular percentages and doing waivers. And
Right.
so,
Right.
But
Yeah.
Joe, this project could actually enjoy all three of those waivers,
Well, it's one concession and two waivers, which are different things.
session and two waivers. Mhm.
Yeah.
yes. And the waivers are unlimited, and you just have to show that there's a physical constraint for you to develop the housing by us imposing our regulations. And usually that is done for setback reductions or landscape coverage or something like that. So, and then the incentives, you have to show the financial, that it has a financial benefit to the project for production of low-income housing. So, and they only have one incentive, correct?
Yes.
Right now.
One more floor. Yeah, the usual.
Yeah.
So
But that's
do you-
not, but the one more floor, that's under our local ordinance, right? We know that's
That is-
our on menu.
And it's
Yeah,
an
that's
on-menu
correct. That's correct.
incentive, so basically they get it if they qualify. As opposed to the waiver where they do have to show the economic benefit that comes from granting the waiver.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an extra step they have to go through for the waiver.
No,
I
the
guess that-
waiver is just for, you need it for physical construction. It's the
Right.
incentive that you have to have some sort of, it's needed to financially construct the affordable housing.
Right, but because it's on menu, we basically have already found that to be the case, so.
Mhm.
So I have a question about this whole issue. So you get one density bonus incentive. And then we're talking about waivers now. How do the waivers fit in in regard to the density bonus incentive? That's separate?
Yeah,
Yes,
Yes.
the density bonus project could have up to 3 exceptions. One exception is it's called either a concession or an incentive. And those concessions or incentives are related to a exception to our city's site development standards that help reduce the cost of providing the affordable housing. Waivers, on the other hand, are exceptions to our site development standards that preclude the construction of the allowed affordable housing plus the extra density bonus units that they're entitled to through this ordinance. And then we have the actual density bonus units for providing a certain number of affordable units. They get extra market rate units in the project, and those are, quote, the density bonus units that become part of the project. And it's an incentive approach to provide affordable housing. The developer is incentivized to provide the affordable housing. The incentive is they get additional market rate units on the site to help offset the cost of providing those affordable units. So there's three key things there, or three exceptions to our rules, two dealing with our site development standards, the other dealing with our density requirements for these types of projects.
Don, I'm always astonished by your ability to make that sound as though it made sense.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to get the book out after the meeting and make sure that
Yeah,
I
I
understand
think
this.
it's a lot.
Thank you.
Do any of the other commissioners have questions for staff before we ask the applicant to speak? No, seeing so yeah, I'd like to invite the applicant to address the commission. I'm not sure who's here tonight
Um,
for the applicant.
Emmerich has been the main contact for staff, and then Annie Leong is the architect that we've been working with. So Annie or Emmerich, do you guys want to show
Yeah,
your screen?
I can show my screen.
That'd be
Okay.
great. Thank you.
So hi everyone, I'm Annie Leong, the project designer for this project. I'm here with my colleague Chick Tang, also the principal of Studio T Square. So first and foremost, thank you everyone and city staff for being here tonight to review our project. We have just finished our complete street study session last week and received a lot of great feedback along with comments from the prior community meeting. We also received a constructive report from the city staff and architect, and we will consolidate all the comments and take them into consideration for the next submittal. As we're still in the preliminary stages of the project, we are looking forward to listening to everyone's feedback and to address them before our next submission. So thank you, Sean, for a really great introduction of our project. I'll keep this very brief, going through my slides. So the brief overview of the project is, it's a 4-story residential condominium building that is 46 feet tall in compliance with the city's base height, plus density bonus height. There's a range of unit types totaling 12 units, and 2 out of the 12 units will be below market rate units. And there will be 1 live work unit at the ground level. The site area is around 7,100 square feet and is currently used by a 3,000 square feet, 2-story commercial building and parking lot, which will later be demolished and replaced. Here are some existing site condition photos. So our site is bounded by First Street on the front, Winnie Street on the right, and the alley at the back. Directly across the street from First Street is the Draper's Market, and directly across on Whitney Street, it's a commercial building and parking lot, which is also the site of a newly proposed 4-story condominium project. In the alley, we have an office building facing directly across from us, and going further down on Whitney to 2nd Street, there's another office building, and at the very corner, we have the at 2nd Street and Winnie Street is the Packard Foundation headquarters. So there's been a lot of new neighborhood developments in this area. As what I mentioned before, the closest project is 355 First Street project, which is a newly proposed 4-story condominium project. And another one closer to our site is the 376 First Street project, which is another 4-story condominium project. So there's been a lot of mixture of projects that's been either in construction or newly or built or just newly proposed and approved, and all of them show a variety of architecture, styles, and materials that help enrich the neighborhood and the district. The project we're proposing will take in elements from the many proposed developments in the area, and we hope to create an infill project that directly complements its adjacent neighborhood with the use of warm materials and a style of architecture that is appropriate to the surroundings. Here is a look of our site plan. We have 1 level concrete parking garage located at the ground floor. The trash and mechanical room is, as mentioned, is located at the back next to the alley to make it easy for trash pickups and maintenance to occur through the alley access. A live-work unit is placed in the front of First Street to line the garage and create a storefront view from the street. This creates a great work from home environment for post-COVID times. Adjacent to the live-work unit is the lobby that also helps in activating the street frontage and promotes pedestrian flow. In our building floor plan on the ground floor, due to the site being too narrow and small, we use parking lifts to achieve more parking stalls while still maintaining several surface parkings. There's a total of 8 stalls in the parking lift, and the remaining 9 stalls are in surface parking stalls, totaling 17 parking spaces. Each unit will have at least 1 parking stall assigned. On the upper floors, we have a mixture of large units with plenty of 2 and 3 bedrooms. Each unit has their own private deck space, and the building is set back from the street level with a landscape buffer in between. The unit is peeled back from First Street and is stepped back on the upper floors to help break down the massing. It's also aligned with large balconies at the front. There's also a common roof deck located at the highest level. Here are the elevations of our 2 street frontages. The building is layered to help break down the massing and give more emphasis on horizontality. There's a distinct base, middle, and top with the top being recessed. We tried to introduce finer grain scale details on the building with the use of many articulations and recesses. We used glass balconies and canopies to create more depth and shadow lines. We also use warm and quality materials such as wood-like tiles and stone porcelain tiles to help enhance the facade. In our next two elevations facing the alley and the side elevations, we took in inspirations from the neighboring buildings and brought in a green wall to help screen and line the parking garage. This also helped create a landscape buffer between the pedestrians at street level. The elevation wraps around the corner from Whitney Street to the alley, and we wanted to address all four sides of the elevation by adding articulation to the sidewall with details and slight recesses. In our building section, we can see how the upper floor has been recessed and peeled back to help further create a layering effect to also help step down the massing. We used the stair and elevator core to create a hierarchy and help break down the roof form. And in this section, you can see how the garage was sloping down towards the alley to make room for the three level car lifts. Here are a few photos of the existing street conditions. So on the top, it's an aerial view of the street conditions and how the commercial district flows down Whitney Street and onto First Street. Looking at our first photo of the corner of First Street and Whitney Street, we can see a very narrow sidewalk directly adjacent to the building. The sidewalk is not continuous and does not align with the office building down the street. There are no curbs located on this street. And there are only two planter boxes that help separate the road to the property. The two crosswalks located at the corner of our site, there's one on Whitney Street and there's one on First Street leading to Draker's Market, which is also located in the middle of First Street, making it very dangerous for pedestrians to cross. Looking at the intersection of Second Street and Whitney Street, we can see how the intersection has newly been modified with bulb outs. This helped increase the pedestrian experience and safety. So we hope to take this into consideration and propose a similar project idea for our project corner. So here's a very conceptual proposed street sketch around our site. We really wanted to create improvement to the existing streetscape, so we decided to add in a bulb out at the corner to help slow down the traffic speed and to make it more pedestrian and bike friendly. We wanted to create a better connection for the pedestrian experience by having a wider sidewalk that's continuous from the adjacent parcel, and also have a more continuous landscape area between the road and the sidewalk. The proposed driveway leading to a garage is placed to align with the existing driveway across the street. And that is my brief introduction of our project. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And so I'm going to bring it back to the commissioners to ask questions and comments for the applicant. And so who would like to start? I have a point of order for the planning department. Is this a time before the commissioners speak that we ask the public to speak? And I know we had a letter come in to staff. If staff would like to talk about that letter. So point of order and the letter.
Okay, yes, Vice Chair Dorn, it would be an opportunity now to allow the members of the public to provide comment. So you can open the public hearing or the public meeting portion of this agenda tonight, and Mr. Gallegos, I think, can speak to the letter that was received.
Sure, thank you.
Well, can we ask questions first of the applicant?
You can do that, yes.
Yeah, and then go to the public comment.
And then go to public comments and then feedback to the applicant.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I just have one quick question. Is there a rooftop deck on this or not? I thought I had seen that. And I'm looking quickly to see how I thought that might be the case. I guess that's just a question. It's a yes or no question.
Yes, there's a rooftop deck right
Okay.
here. Let's see, it's on top.
And is it just in the front portion, or how far back does it go? Because it wasn't clear.
It's only in the front portion. We kept it small to minimize the 2 points of egress on top. So maybe like around like half of this.
Okay, just over basically the same size as the live work unit on the bottom,
Yeah,
Okay.
similar, yes.
something like that.
Mhm.
Okay, great, thank you. So I was right, it's there.
Oh,
sorry.
I do have a question for the applicant. So with your BMRs, which units are your BMRs? Are they 1, 2, or 3 bedroom units?
We have not appointed our BMR units, but it'll be, it won't be limited to whichever bedroom. We'll decide on that later.
Okay, thank you.
I had a quick question. I had seen in the report that I think the building department had said that the rooftop deck would need 2 exits. Is that something that was confirmed, or because I'm just wondering if that's going to affect the second exit point for the rooftop?
No, because we kept our rooftop guarded below 750 square feet, so we are not required to have 2 points of egress. So it's mostly only 1 point of access is through this stair and elevator. at the
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Got a question, a couple questions actually. Did you consider doing underground parking for this project?
We actually looked into that, but since the site is so narrow, we put a ramp in there. It's mostly not very feasible and not very practical, which is why we decided to stick with the car lift system instead.
And you mentioned the BMR units. They are going to be the 1 bedrooms, right? That's what was in the report. It's just a question of which 1 bedrooms?
We're not sure yet. We'll have to choose them later down the road.
Okay. Would you consider doing one of the bigger units, a 2 or 3 bedroom?
We can take that into consideration as well.
Okay.
Right. Any other comments or questions from the commissioners? I have one for staff, if no comments. So when the applicant comes back in, they will have to submit a design material board. Because from what I understand from the architect, these are wood-like tiles versus, the visual like now looks like wood-like siding.
Yeah, we will ask for a materials board as part of the formal submittal. So
Great. All right, thank you.
I do have a question or two. I think you've done a very nice job. I like the building. Couple of my concerns are the setbacks. You've got 2 feet setback proposed for the front and the rear. I know a couple of the other buildings down the street, I believe, have 10-foot setbacks. 2 foot, you're really sitting right on the property line there. I commend you on what you did on the Whitney Street, the bulb out and the sidewalk there, so that you will eventually connect with the other sidewalk on the other side of the alley. The setback concerns me. The parking concerns me. You only have proposed 17 spaces. You've got 4 3-bedrooms, and you've got 5 2s. These people are going to be parking their second cars on the street. There's no public parking. And of course, you have 3 1-bedrooms. I would assume those folks that live there will only have 1 car. That's an assumption that's probably inaccurate. But the 2 bedrooms and the 3 bedrooms, you really, in my opinion, don't have enough parking. I know it was earlier mentioned about the bike parking that I guess you'll eventually have provided that somewhere. I think that's about all I have at this point.
Sure.
Thank
And
you.
Commissioner Roche, I think what I had intended was that we ask questions now. This is for the benefit of the rest of the commissioners. And then once we close the public section, we can come back with our comments, but I certainly appreciate your comments right now at this point.
Shelley, I'm sorry. I
No,
apologize.
no worries. I just wanted to clarify because I think we all probably have some constructive comments to give. But if there are no other commissioners that would like to ask questions of the applicant, I'd like to open it up to public comment, public questions.
Great.
So you can see who's on the line.
Yes, I will take charge of that, Vice Chair.
Thank you.
So I think Cindy Newman is from their team, but I Cindy, are you on the design team? Nope. Okay.
Not on the applicants.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I mixed you up with. So you have
Legion.
3 minutes to speak about the project.
For Legion? Okay. I think my husband should speak first.
Okay, go ahead.
You?
Yeah.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ken Newman. I'm a member of the American Legion Post Los Altos finance officer and a third-generation member. We have reviewed the plans and met with the applicant. Although the applicant has offered to include our building in an expanded project, we have declined at this time because of our building's historical significance, iconic design, and the substantial property tax consequence of being assessed as a new building. Our building was built in 1940 by World War I veterans. It was the site of the town's formation meetings attended by Guy Shoup and future Senator Cranston. President Carter also visited here. Currently, we have a historical designation application and process and are working with Ann Heppenstall to formally become one of the neighborhood emergency network centers. Our building has emergency supplies, including pet food and a ham radio antenna, which the applicant has pledged to mitigate any negative impacts to. We have just applied for a building permit for a light upgrade of the club room at the rear. Later, we will get a permit to re-roof the building. The proposed design of the project is compatible with new buildings, but not older wooden buildings in the downtown. In particular, the 5-story wall structure on the zero lot line is a major concern to us, visually and structurally by weight. The 5-story wall contains a stairway and elevator to the rooftop garden over the 4-story residential. The massive wall structure significantly prevents natural light from entering our building. We could install skylights, but we all know they eventually leak. Security is a concern too, because the wall prevents casual surveillance of our side yard and entrance by the public or police. We will have to install tall gates to discourage potential criminal activity or mischief. We suggested to the applicant that he relocate the rooftop garden to street level on the First Street side to capitalize on the existing open space created by our Legion Plaza. This would reduce the wall from 5 to 4 stories and reduce the weight of the wall next to our private storm drain. As to parking, our concern is the city lift system accounts for slightly more than half of the parking spaces, and residents will not use it due to fear of mechanical malfunction or public safety energy shutoffs or avoidance of developer parking charges if implemented. There should be a condition that residents with 2 vehicles have to park one in the city lift and no parking fees. Street parking is currently extremely limited, largely in part to draggers, draggers, because employees are not allowed to park in their large parking lot and occupy street parking from 6 a.m. to after 9 p.m. We are opposed to residential street permit parking as there is not enough street parking for customers of existing businesses located far from the public parking lots. The trash room should have an electronic lock for easy access by garbage company and prevent dumpsters from being left out in the alley. In summary, we recommend that this development, 1, reduce the height of the massive wall from 5 to 4 stories, 2, relocate the garden from the rooftop to the front of the building on First Street, adjacent to the Legion Plaza. 3, condition that residents with 2 vehicles park 1 vehicle in the city lift system and that there be no garage parking fees imposed for residents.
Mr. Newman,
Or-
Mr. Newman,
Sorry?
you're past the 3 minutes. So.
Oh. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. But as a city staff, we do value your input. If you have that written down, can you forward it on to city staff so we can make sure the applicant gets it?
Yeah, we sure did. We sent that today.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's see, Mrs. Newman, would you like to comment also? And then at this point, Guido, after they comment, is this when the applicant gets their 5-minute rebuttal, or is it speaker?
Usually we have public comment, and then it's really up to the chair, vice chair to ask further questions of the applicant or staff, and then the rebuttal from the applicant. So it just kind of depends on the flow. So.
Thanks for clarifying. Newbie. Okay.
I'll be quick. You have to mute, Ken. Sorry, we're muting on the other side here. I'll be quick. We met with Emmerich McDonald and his partner, John Barton. Very friendly, very willing to work with us, made some suggestions. We're happy about at least maybe one BMR would be great. But we are concerned about, this is how the world is now, these large buildings. But we think we can coexist if the building wall was set back, that rooftop garden was put in the front setback, that would allow us to, that would actually visually open up the whole space, because we've got the Legion Plaza there. And if the rooftop garden becomes in the front at street level, then it really opens up open space at the pedestrian level, and the building can cantilever over that garden space. That would reduce that 5-story wall to 4, and there wouldn't need to, goes from 5 to 4. That helps with the weight. Parking is a pain downtown, and the cleaners and the jewelers and the tire places, all of us on the opposite side of Drager's, unfortunately, are built out since the 1940s. We don't have parking, and we share the street parking with Drager's employees. If these residents come in 3 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and they don't use that parking garage, or they have more than 1.5 vehicles and they have guests, it's a real impact. We are opposed to residential street parking permits because it puts the rest of us out in the cold. But we're working with Emmerich, and we're looking forward to working with him and giving him access to that side of the building, and hope this works out. We think it's a good building for what it needs to be, for what we need in the downtown, which is, residential, but we need parking. And maybe the city could get another public parking lot on this side of town. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Next up, we've got C. Tang.
Yes, I'm here with the applicant. I'm the principal in charge for the architect side, so I have no comments. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Nick Samuelson, is that the same?
Yes, that's right. I'm the landscape architect from the Casarda Partnership. Right, thanks.
And Finn Sparks. Did you want to speak?
Oh, we don't have any. No, thank you.
All right. And Mr. Bear, would you like to speak on this item?
Yes, I would. Thank you. I'm John Bear. I live within 1,000 feet of this project, and I'm a former planning commissioner. I'm going to read the letter I sent based on the last meeting review of this project that unfortunately was not forwarded to the Planning Commission staff to the Planning Commission in a timely way. So I will be going over the 3 minutes. The project is beyond a disappointment as proposed. The building has a range of issues that applicant needs to address, likely by starting over with a blank sheet of paper. And I'm not saying that in jest. There are 24 bedrooms spread among 12 units with only 17 parking spots and no guest parking. How about at least one level of underground parking, since there's access via the alleyway, which is an underutilized asset in this project. The BMR unit should be very low income and should include a 3-bedroom unit. Vinyl windows are proposed, perhaps the architect might want to read our design guidelines before proposing something that is explicitly not allowed. There appears to be no setback of the windows from the exterior building plane, again, a requirement. The building design is lacking in many ways, and I'm being polite. The elevator shaft makes the building like a giant Pez dispenser. Don't think about it too much because you're not going to be able to sleep at night. There is no setback of that 58-foot structure. Really? You know, can't the architect find a different place for that shaft? Otherwise, the city and the residents are getting shafted. The building height is 46 feet, is driven by excessively high plate heights on each of the 4 floors, at least 1 foot more than is necessary. The roof trellis is ugly and just magnifies the excessive height of the building. There is little landscape, and having decks facing the loading dock of draggers borders on stupidity. Suggests that each owner be required to sign a waiver to avoid complaints of early morning noise from the draggers operation. And yes, they start unloading trucks very early in the morning. The left-hand side of the building has a blank wall, which again is not allowed by our objective standards, including the fact that the adjacent building, as the individuals mentioned earlier, is a historic structure and therefore is not going away. I would encourage significant changes to this project. There have been a lot of projects developed, proposed on First Street. This is among the worst. Thank you.
All right, next up, we have Salim.
Yeah, I'm Salim. I'm a Los Altos resident. I've lived here for 18 years. I love this project. I think it's beautiful. I love the different depths in the design and also the landscaping buffer. I wish more apartments in Los Altos did that. I think it really adds to the green space in the area. We need more housing. We need more below market rate housing. We also need more market rate housing. This is a fantastic project that creatively makes use of this lot. And I think it's a huge improvement over, just the surface parking lot. So I love this project. I realize there's harsh criticism, but I promise there's always harsh criticism in Los Altos, regardless of how great the project is. So I hope this gets moving without delay. Thank you.
I believe that's everybody. Let me double check.
Okay.
1 second. Yes, I believe that's everybody, Vice Chair.
Great, thank you. Thank you, public, for your comments. So I am going to close the public comments right now and bring this back to the commission for their comments to the applicant. So who would like to begin? We've heard from Richard. Anybody?
I can go.
All right, thanks, Maris. Appreciate it.
Sure. So I have a few comments. The first thing is the front setback. So I think that we've had maybe 5 or 6 projects on First Street already, and we've been really consistent with wanting to have that open entry area. Just looking at the pedestrian experience, the curb appeal. So I think with this project being so close to the sidewalk, with no relief whatsoever, I think it's really not consistent with what we've been approving. So I think the buildings in downtown, the entryway is even more important because, so many people are driving by, walking by. So I would really take a look at that portion of the building. You have a live workspace in the front. I know, you mentioned why you have it there. I'm just not sure if it really benefits the project, especially because it's the main reason why the building is pushed out so much. So I would really take a look at that. Next thing is the architecture, which I think is pretty successful with the style and the materials. I think the articulation is really nice, especially as it steps back. But I think when you have that elevator tower and that stair tower that goes, past the roof and the awning next to it, I think those two things really overpower the building. I think there's no reason why that tower and rooftop can't be pushed back towards the middle of the building or even the rear. You know, you look at, I believe it's 440 First Street, which is across the street. That's a smaller project that pushed back that entryway. And it was really successful how they did that. So I would look at that. There's also something to be said about having the plaza space in the front. You know, I think the American Legion building, I thought that, you know, that was a good suggestion, especially because those buildings are really pushed back. So possibly thinking about how those spaces can kind of work together. I think there's an opportunity there. So I would look at that. You know, normally I'm fine with rooftop decks, but in this case, you know, I would look at that possibility. The other thing I think is the parking. You know, because if you were to move that stair tower back, I think it is going to affect the parking spaces, obviously. And so I think that it's a possibility to look at that layout. I think that, you know, adding more lift spaces, I think is going to be key, not only to add more parking, but also to just get more room. Because I think that once you add another 3x3 lift, I think you're going to have more room to play with. And more flexibility. So, you know, that first floor is really going to determine the architecture of the building. So I would really look at, you know, how to reinterpret that first floor level, and what else we can kind of work with. And then along Whitney Street, you know, you have the lattice on the ground level with the greenery. And I think that's nice, but my worry is that, you know, because there's not specific details for that it ends up just being the lattice and we don't really get the greenery. So I would just maybe look at alternatives. Maybe architecturally, we can figure out a solution. Lighting, you know, having an awning above the garage opening, a gate for the garage opening. So stuff like that just makes it look more residential. I think that would be really interesting. And yeah, I really liked what you did on Whitney Street with the buffer, and the bulb out as well. So I think overall there's just a few things that need to be tweaked, but overall I think it's a great project. So that's it.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, who else? Looks like Commissioner Messenger. Yeah, you're muted.
I'm going to echo a lot of what Ruth was talking about. I mean, I congratulate you. I understand it's a tough space to work with. It's narrow and you're trying, and I like infill projects, so that's all the positives. But I do think there has to be some thought given to the bulk on the first floor in terms of it's just too much. We do need that setback. I mean, First Street is already a narrow street. It has very narrow sidewalks. And as Ruth was pointing out, to be consistent with other projects we've improved, I think that setback is just something you have to do. And you need to rethink about how you can make that work for you. I also think the elevator tower and the trellis are just overpowered. And again, whether you move it, whether you use a different material choice, right now it just stands there as this huge tower, which just isn't consistent with our, you know, downtown guidelines of being pedestrian friendly and, you know, as much as we can maintaining that village character. You know, I wish there was something you could do about parking. I don't know what the solutions are. Maybe it's lifts, maybe it's something else, but I think that needs to be addressed. And I think guest parking that one of the public speakers mentioned is a good thing to think about. I also am very troubled by that proposed left side elevation. That is just kind of, to me, horrendous to look at and need to do something different over there. And whether it's bringing the roof garden down there or something else, that just is not attractive. So that's it.
Thank you. Commissioner Steinle, would you like to go?
Yeah, I have a few comments. First of all, I want to agree with everything that both Marus and Susan said. My notes sound just like what they said, particularly the left wall. We being the city, have tended not to approve projects that have blank walls. And particularly in this case, because next to it is a building that's not going anywhere. It's not going to be replaced by an equally big building. So that's what people are going to be looking at. So that's going to have there's something will have to be done to make that a more interesting thing to look at. A plain blank wall of that size isn't going to be approved. So that needs to be looked at. I also am unalterably opposed to rooftop decks. I actually live in a condominium complex. I am the president of the board of directors. I have been the president of the board of directors for forever. And rooftop decks are the kiss of death because it is an easy way to get water intrusion, which is the one horrible thing in a condominium complex. And one of the things that will happen is that after this project is approved and after the residents have taken over and under SB 800, they're basically going to have no choice but to sue the developer for construction defects and forced repairs. And this is a guaranteed repair. It's a big problem that will face the HOA, and it is a curse. Now, I understand it's like fireplaces and other kinds of things, that amenities that supposedly attract the purchasers. And in my opinion, that's nonsense. I would get rid of the rooftop deck completely. This would solve a number of the design issues. It would also bring the elevator tower down to the 4 rather than the 5-story level, which would make it appear less looming than it does now. And I would support putting it someplace else other than in the corner if that can be done. But basically, I think that the roof should just be a roof and you shouldn't allow anybody up there. There's been a tendency in looking at the projects on First Street not to approve rooftop decks on First Street. So you're sort of swimming against the current here if you're trying to propose a rooftop deck. But I think that they're a dreadful idea, and every single time they come up, I'm going to say it's a dreadful idea and these should not be done. Okay, so I think that would solve a lot of those problems. I think the idea of trying to incorporate a plaza notion with your good neighbors to the left side of the building is a very good one, and that's something that ought to be considered. I do like the articulations. I do like most of the materials that are presented, at least in the pictures, although I do share the reviewing architect's suggestion that perhaps the porcelain tiles got to go. I think that just looks grotesque and is very definitely not Los Altos. So I think that needs to be rethought. And you know, if we were rethinking the design in some of the ways that have been suggested, that might take care of that. But I think that fixing the roof and fixing the wall next to the American Legion building and maybe working with that front elevation. There's nothing really anybody can do about the alley, I guess. It's always going to be there and it's going to be whatever it is. But there's something can be done along First Street. As it's been pointed out, it's a very narrow street. There's a lot of traffic there. And that has to be accommodated in some fashion. But there are a lot of things that are nice about the building. Those are the things I think need to be fixed. Okay.
Great.
Rant over. Thank you.
Thanks. Great. Well, last but not least, I don't want to pile on, but I'll make some key points. I actually commend you for the way you planned the entrance to the parking garage on Whitney. You know, one of my biggest concerns is the alley, that we are adding a lot of traffic to the alley. And I think it was a really good design thought that you came in on Whitney. I'm a big believer in car lifts since I've seen many of them work very successfully. And I agree with Commissioner Ahi's comment about rethinking the parking using lifts. I will also reiterate with the other commissioners, the stairwell elevator shaft, it doesn't belong. In my mind, it's too high. It exceeds the building height by another 10 feet. The placement of it doesn't work as a good neighbor, as that does the blank wall against the American Legion Hall. So I would urge you to rethink that side of the building. The other point that I'd like to reiterate is I would like to see a front setback. It's just neighbor friendly, sidewalk friendly. Those sidewalks are very narrow, and we've not been approving projects on First Street that had a 0 lot line. It's a great idea about the plaza, being a good neighbor with the plaza space, and maybe eliminating that rooftop deck. I'm not opposed to rooftop decks, but I don't want to go down that path and tell you why. But I think that is a really great neighbor idea. Of course, it will take some thoughtfulness between you and the American Legion Hall to do that, but that's a great suggestion. The other thing is that we have been really looking at the materials that that have been submitted by our applicants, because we'll see one thing in a rendering, and then when it gets built, it is something that we didn't expect. So I'd like to encourage not to be using that ceramic tile and look at using the natural wood materials that actually represent what the project looks like. But please, submit your material boards and we'll review them later. And we have now implemented a policy where a year later, we're coming back and re-looking at what we've approved the year before. Let's see. I also agree with Commissioner Ahi about the placement of the live workspace, on the first floor facing the street. I did want to make one comment though to the applicant. You mentioned that the driveway on Whitney is adjacent to the driveway across the street, which is the Halo lot. That's all going to change. We did receive the application for the condominium building, and I believe their entrance and exit is off the alley. So I just wanted to correct that one point. And I do know that this project is going to be able to have, waivers and exceptions under SB 330, but really would like to encourage you to look at having those BMRs not just be a 1-bedroom unit that has the worst view in the building, and actually coming up to what the spirit and the spirit of the law is, and having the BMRs be not the stepchild of the building. Let's see, I think those were all my additional comments. I like the overall design and look of the building. I like the articulation. I do like the balcony. So I do like the overall look and the feel of the building. Let's see, so now if there are no other comments by our commission, I'll close this part of our meeting and ask the applicant if you would like 5 minutes to rebuttal to anything that the public has said or that the commission has said.
Thank you everyone for the comments. We'll take all these comments into consideration and work on our next submittal. Chuck, do you have anything else you want to add?
Yes, I just want to thank the whole commission and also the street commissions for a lot of the constructive input. So we'll roll all these comments and hopefully deliver a project you'll be all very proud of. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your time and efforts on this and working with your neighbors.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we
Commissioner Dorn, you're muted.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we'll close the study session and the public hearing, and we will now move on to the consent calendar, which has our Planning Commission minutes from September the 2nd, our draft. Are there any changes or comments to that draft? Ooh, I hear none. If we have none, can I call for a motion to approve? Yay.
Yes, also move.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, Mayor, all right, as Commissioner Ahi seconds that. Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Thank you. Great,
Motion passes unanimously.
perfect, thank you.
So that's 6-0, correct, John?
That is 5-0.
5-0. Yeah.
Mayor.
Oh, yeah, because Ronit's gone. Okay.
And David.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this comes the part of the night when we want to talk about vehicle miles traveled. And I am so excited about this conversation because I would love to hear a staff explanation about the differences between LOS and VMT and what we're looking at in our town. So Let's see, Guido, I believe this is your presentation. I don't see Guido here.
Yeah, I'm
He disappeared.
not sure what happened to him, but he would be doing the presentation this evening.
Yeah.
I believe we have Michelle Hunt from Hexagon Traffic Consultants. That
Oh, wait, we just got a text. Yeah, so he says have Michelle from Hexagon start. So thank you, you're pitch hitting, keeping up with the baseball theme here.
All right, go Giants.
So commissioners, let us introduce Michelle Hunt with Hexagon Circulation Engineering, and she will be starting the presentation this evening. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay. So we have been working on this topic for a while now. Hopefully we're getting close to the end of this. It's an important topic. Tonight, my presentation is going to be pretty brief because it's not an entirely new topic. I'm going to go over just a little background in case there are some people who are new to the topic. But I'm mostly going to focus just on the changes that we've made to the proposed policy since we came before the commission last time. And then I have a few examples that'll hopefully be helpful. So we are here addressing this topic because Senate Bill 743 was passed, and it changed how the transportation impacts are analyzed under CEQA. Previously, we used level of service to evaluate significant impacts on the transportation network. And level of service is based on delay and congestion. But now moving forward, we will be using vehicle miles traveled. And this new metric aligns with the state's climate goals, and it promotes shorter vehicle trips and a diversity of land uses with less sprawl and multimodal transportation. So bicycles, walking, transit alternatives to just driving in your own personal vehicle. So up to this point, we've already had 5 public meetings in the city of Los Altos. We started out by going to the Complete Streets Commission back in May of 2020. We've gone to the City Council and Planning Commission in the same month, May of 2020. And then we had a little bit of a pause, and then we went back to the Complete Streets Commission now 2 more times to get more detailed comments. So since we were last before the Planning Commission back in May of 2020, here are the changes that we've made based on the comments we received from all of the bodies that we've been before, as well as public comments. First of all, we previously had suggested a screening criteria of 110 daily vehicle trips, and that would mean that any project that had fewer than that number of trips would not have to do a complete VMT analysis and could be assumed to have a less than significant impact on the vehicle, on the VMT. That recommendation was based on the State Office of Planning and Research, their recommendation and guidance to local agencies. But Los Altos had previously been using a 50-day daily vehicle trip threshold to determine which projects would need to do a traffic study. And so we received input that generally, broadly, people were much more in favor of using that same lower criterion rather than 110 daily trips. So we've made that change to the policy. Secondly, we were questioned about why certain schools would be screened out. The OPR recommended that local serving public institutions could as well be screened out and assumed to have a less than significant impact because they are akin to a local serving retail use with short trips. And but the question was whether private schools or other magnet schools or charter schools as well should be exempted because they have larger attendance areas. So we've refined the language in this section to clarify that this exemption would only apply to neighborhood elementary schools, and they would not have to do a full VMT analysis. And then lastly, we just made some clarifications in this companion document that outlines the policy and provides some answers to some frequently asked questions. We provided additional information in a comparison table to more cities and how our proposed policy compares to other cities like Mountain View and other nearby cities. We also provided a more explanation about how the recommended threshold for defining when a VMT impact occurs, which is 15% below the existing citywide average, how that goal fits with the state's emission goals. And then lastly, our policy now references transportation checklists that we've been working on developing, and we will be bringing those forward. We've been working with the Complete Streets Commission. We've already brought one draft, and we've been meeting with a couple of the commissioners there to make some changes on that. And these checklists will establish the requirements for the local transportation analysis. So that will evaluate other measures besides VMT. So we will continue to look at level of service as well as queuing and other concerns like related to access or pedestrian safety. The checklist also set forth the requirements for projects to implement certain offsite improvements. And lastly, the checklist set forth TDM requirements which will be complementary to this VMT policy. So I have a few examples here in this table, but this is a little too detailed to read. This is in the companion document, and I've just picked out a few that I have on my next slides to go through with you. So my first example is at 5150 El Camino Real. Here is the site right up here along the northern edge of the city. The project contained 196 multifamily dwelling units. And this project would be screened out because of its location. The VMT in this area along El Camino Real is already below the threshold, which is at least 15% below the citywide average. So based on the information that we already have, we already know that the VMT will be below the threshold, and therefore we would assume that would have a less than significant impact and no further analysis would be required. But even though it would be screened out in terms of VMT, the city through the transportation checklist would still require an expanded local transportation analysis to look at intersection level of service and other concerns about the project's effect on traffic. The checklist again set forth requirements for offsite improvements and also TDM measures. The next project example is at 999 Fremont Avenue. This is the location here. This project is a small project. It had 3 multifamily dwelling units and approximately 1,500 square feet of retail space. This project also would be screened out from a VMT analysis for the residential use based on its size. Any projects that generate less than 50 daily vehicle trips, so a 3 dwelling unit project would generate less than 50 vehicle trips. And the size of the retail being only 1,500 square feet is less than the threshold that we've identified to to define local serving retail projects. So both the retail and the residential components would be screened out, and this project as well, again, wouldn't be required to do any further VMT analysis, but they would have to do additional requirements for the LTA, frontage improvements, and TDM measures based on the checklists. And then this project is at 425 First Street. This project contains 20 multifamily dwelling units. This project would not be screened out due to the small project criterion because it would generate more than 50 daily vehicle trips. And its location, according to this heat map here, is shown in the yellow, which means that the VMT in this area of the city for residential uses is below the average, but it is not 15% below the average. So this project would be required to do a VMT analysis, and it would be required to show mitigation to reduce the VMT to below this threshold of 15% below the threshold. So here are some examples of mitigation that would effectively mitigate this project. If the project incorporated affordable housing, which has been shown to generate less vehicle traffic, either 20% or with 20% of the units at very low income and 15% at low income affordable levels. If it included bicycle parking, a car share parking space, bike share program, and transit subsidies for a VTA Smart Pass program, as well as a voluntary travel behavior change program for all their residents. All of those measures would be sufficient to mitigate the VMT impact. And again, all the projects would be required to complete varying levels of other analyses and improvements based on the transportation checklist. And just to clarify, these other requirements will vary based on the size of the project and based on the usage of the project. So this one would require a standard LTA, which has a slightly smaller scope of analysis than the expanded LTA that would be required for this larger residential project. And then my last example is an office project. This is at 467 First Street. Again, this one wouldn't be screened out. It's too large, and the VMT here is not already below the threshold. So they would be required to do an analysis and show some mitigation to reduce their VMT below this level. And this is just an example of certain measures that combined would be effective mitigation for this project. You know, this isn't the only package of mitigation measures. It would be up to the applicant. They could you know, change and come up with different measures. But just to give you an example of the extent of changes needed, they would need to provide bike parking, again, a car share program and ride share program with subsidies, and as well as preferred parking for carpools. I think that this project had already proposed a reduction in their parking, a variance to reduce the parking from 52 to 45 spaces. They would need to provide transit subsidies, as well as, again, sort of a marketing and education program to try and encourage people to use alternatives to driving. And with all of those measures, this project could mitigate their VMT impact as well. This project as well would be required to do a standard LTA. It's a relatively small project. They would be required to do offsite improvements as well as TDM measures. And that basically is what I have, but I'm happy to take your questions now.
Yeah, I have a question for staff. So when we look at VMT, and I'll use the example on First Street, we have the alley way entrances to the new condominium buildings. So First Street in itself, because it's going to have, you know, those 20 multifamily dwelling units, that puts it into the VMT. And is there anything in our town, because we do have alleyways that may not fall on these major streets, that compel them to be in the VMT? Does that make sense to you, John or Michelle?
Michelle, you're muted, so.
I can answer that if you'd
Sure.
like.
No, go ahead, Michelle.
Okay, so the alleys, I understand. I think you're pointing out that because there are alleys, that there would be less trips, for example, added onto First Street, and on that basis, could projects be exempted from VMT analysis? So the answer is no. This analysis of VMT is really a holistic look at the total travel generated by the project. It is not site specific, so it doesn't look at where the trips are added or the impact on any particular roadway or any particular intersection. It's just looking at how much vehicle travel in total is going to be generated by this project. And for a residential project, it would be compared to other projects in the city, based on the VMT per resident. If it's lower, at least 15% below the average, then, it would be screened out. So that's an important clarification, that VMT is not site specific.
Sure. And the volunteer travel behavior change program, I have a little experience with that through my employer. I mean, how do we legislate that on a building like this? Especially when it's a condominium building and you're selling those units?
So this would be have to be run through like an HOA or something like that, because it would be ongoing need to provide this kind of support. And basically there's several ways, but basically you're going to reach out and provide information to the residents there to remind them of the different options and programs that are made available. Some that may be specific to this project site, or some just in general.
Sure. Great. Thank you. Yes, commissioners, please jump in if you have questions, comments. Guido, did you want to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say, Michelle and I had some pretty extensive conversations with the Complete Streets Commission, and you asked a very good question, Vice Chair, about how do we actually kind of follow up on this stuff. And so, there are conditions of approval placed on projects. And then kind of the second part of, hopefully after we get adoption by the council, after it goes through commission, would be kind of monitoring of these TDM plans. And so that, unfortunately, we have not fully worked that out, but yes, there will have to be an implementation phase to make sure that whatever TDM measures are adopted are reviewed either on an annual basis and either done by staff, or if we outsource that to a third-party consulting firm. So
yeah, code enforcement is the hardest part of this, especially on these four. What I see in my experience are the for sale units. We farm it out to a third party. Yeah,
right.
Enforcement. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions relating to what you mentioned, how neighborhood schools, public neighborhood schools, are being sort of treated like one thing in Los Altos. If you're aware, the neighborhood schools are not actually always neighborhood schools. But having said that, like Covington School, for example, draws people from 3.5 miles away. It's a K-6 school, so I can assure you those kids are being driven to Covington every day. Gardner Bullis also pulls from about 2 miles away. So it's not a perfect system for the elementary schools. But how are elementary schools, public elementary schools in general, treated? Aren't they somewhat treated differently than a commercial project?
Well, the local school district is the CEQA, responsible for the CEQA analysis, but the schools, you're asking about elementary schools in particular, how they're handled?
Yeah, I just say in Los Altos, if you're familiar with Los Altos school attendance areas, they actually are not. Some of them are neighborhood, some of them are not neighborhood because of how they had to go far away to get enough enrollment to keep the school open, to be very blunt about it.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm not as familiar as you are with the details of the different districts. But I would point out though that there are more, elementary schools. The schools tend to be smaller and there's more of them. So on that basis, the trips would in general be shorter than for high schools or middle schools. So now
Well, what I'm just saying is I think it's an assumption that you maybe can make in some communities. It's not an assumption that actually is necessarily valid here. I can tell you, I live near one of these schools. There is a backup of probably 40 cars on drop off and pickup times because the students live 3.5 miles away.
Yeah. Well, if it is, if you feel that it's not appropriate, we could take out the schools entirely from this criteria, and schools would be then, required to do a VMT analysis for all types of schools.
I think it's something you might want to get a little more information on and see where the enrollments really draw from. And I imagine that, for example, I can also tell you the charter schools here, there are 2 of them, draw probably from a smaller geographic area now than do some of the neighborhood public schools, so-called neighborhood public schools. So.
Yeah, that is a very good point, Susan, especially where I live in between 2 private schools and a public school that draws it. You can't get out in the morning. That's
exactly.
Any of the other commissioners have questions or comments?
Yeah, I had a quick thing. I just was curious because, we have a lot of the examples that you gave for First Street were ones that needed that analysis, just because of the location and then the size. I just was curious because, we're going to have probably 7 or 8 projects all in the same vicinity over the next, 5 or 6 years. Is there a way that the city can start to develop kind of a standard for these new projects so that, that way it might help the analysis a little bit more? That way, information can be shared. I just wonder if there's an opportunity there where we have new future projects in downtown that we can kind of use that information instead of each project kind of having their own separate analysis. We can kind of build a standard, I guess you could say.
Yeah, well, the VMT analysis is not very time consuming or expensive to do. It's very, very straightforward. And we're really just looking, in most cases, any mitigation is usually through implementing TDM measures like a transit subsidy or bike parking or things like that. It could be making an improvement to a bicycle lane is, those kinds of improvements. And the VMT analysis is not something that is sort of additive, since we're looking at the VMT per resident. Each project's VMT is independent of what the other projects around it are doing. But what the city is doing is through the transportation checklist is setting forth standard requirements to identify the type of analysis of other issues, including level of service and so forth, that are related and additive from one project to another. And certainly there is, opportunity for a lot of that information to be sort of shared and common. And the city as well has a traffic model that evaluates or keeps track of traffic data that's been developed and projects that have been proposed and approved, so that a consistent data set can be used and made available and used for all of the traffic studies for all those projects.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments?
Well, I have some questions and comments because frankly, I seem to be the only HOA person in Los Altos. I don't see how this can work, quite frankly. And this is maybe more for Guido and eventually Jolie, and not so much for Michelle, because it's not her job to make it work. It's just to offer these things. But just looking at this list that's here, the affordable housing, that's the developer. The developer, that developer's got to make that work. We can't just say it happens that way. Bicycle parking, fine, you can do that. The car share and the bike share, who's actually running that? Who's doing that?
So the car share, it could be that the developer designates and builds and designates one parking space that would be made available to a Zipcar, and then you would have to, reach out to Zipcar and get a commitment that they would station one of their car share vehicles there. Bike share program, I mean, in the past, there have been community-wide programs. Right now, there aren't any community-wide programs in your area. But for larger residential projects, you can, well, even relatively small ones, the developer can implement their own fleet of bikes that is available just for their residents. And this is particularly helpful, like if it were to include an e-bike or cargo bikes, where residents would be able to use a cargo bike, for example, to go to a grocery store where they might not consider going to the store, with their own bike because of just how much they're trying to carry. So it could convince people not to drive.
But the developer is gone. These are for sale units. The developer sells them and is gone, is then replaced by the HOA, which is actually a corporation which owns the common property. And the
Right.
HOA is now in charge. It's not the developer anymore. And the HOA can change all of its rules. They can rewrite their CC&Rs however they want. They can do whatever they want. Whatever is worked out with the developer, the HOA can say, we're not doing it. So unless we're going to make this part of our code, and I guess this is the question, Guido, that I'm sort of aimed at you or John or Jolie, is that the idea that we're going to make this, we're going to write code to enforce this?
Absolutely. And as I alluded to, the complete streets, actually, we had pretty extensive conversations about enforcement. And so we have spoken about putting this stuff as conditions of approval, and then annual monitoring, and how that goes about, we still have to work out as a city staff. But absolutely, the HOA would be on the hook for this stuff. So
And transit subsidies, where do they come from? Is that the city that providing that?
I'd have to defer to Michelle on the transit subsidies. I was just trying to address your question related to.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah.
I have questions about how all these things work because HOAs work in a different sort of way. And unless there's a law saying you've got to do it, it isn't happening.
Yeah, and I actually sat on my HOA board for 3 years, so I'm relatively familiar with the David Sterling Act. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that HOAs can be on the hook. We could actually put it in the CC&Rs if we have to.
But they can be changed. They can be changed.
They can be changed, but that has to be done by a majority of the members within the HOA.
That's true.
And if it's changed and if it's in violation of a condition of approval from a city, well, now there's a code enforcement issue there. So
right, there is. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So so to be determined. We definitely need to iron out the kinks, but definitely your concern and several complete street commissioners' concerns about actual enforcement still needs to be followed up on. So.
Any other comments or questions for Michelle or Guido? We don't have an action on this, is that correct, Guido? We just discussion and
I thought we actually agendized. Let me double check the agenda.
it's provide direction to city staff. Yeah, it's provide direction to city staff.
Yeah, so we were trying. So we did hear from Commissioner Messinger about do we want to take a look at the school issue? That's something that we can follow up on.
I agree with her.
We will also try to maybe iron out better enforcement mechanisms before we go to council. So I will work with Michelle on those two. If there's any other specific direction you would like to give me or Michelle before we ask potentially for a recommendation to go to the city council, or it's your choice as a body. If you want us to bring it back, we can certainly bring it back. It's up to your call as a commission.
Sure. Could I have some open discussion on that? I mean, code, let me just make one comment. I mean, code enforcement with maybe even the addition of a third party that implements this.
Okay.
And it's in the CCNRs and it is part of the conditions of approval. So it runs with the land, doesn't
Right.
go away with the developer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, sure.
Didn't, during the discussion of the Packard parking lot, it came up that when the building was originally approved, there was a requirement that they did some vehicle sharing and some various and sundry requirements that had to be monitored by, I believe, the city. Is that anything similar to what Eric is discussing and generally talking about change without changing HOAs?
I'm not sure what you're referring to, Commissioner.
I know.
Roche?
Yeah.
I think I was going to chime in and I said, I was going to say a lot of TDM programs, the cities in the conditions of approval require yearly reports or yearly monitoring on the TDMs. And I know on the Packard building, that was a condition and they had to monitor and do
5 years, I think.
5 years, and then to make sure that it was working, and then after 5 years, if it was working, then that condition went away. But I do know that TDMs can be, you can make conditions of approval that you have to submit a report to the local agency yearly or something like that. Michelle probably knows more about that, but TDMs usually have a reporting requirement.
Well, maybe that's something that could be done, that when you're requiring a building to have this VMT's requirement, we could make them have a recent report. The HOA would have another job to do and raise the homeowner association some more.
Absolutely, Commissioner. And as part of this recommendation to council, the Planning Commission can direct staff to add some language to the VMT policy in terms of enforcement, or you can ask us to come back and we can prepare some language and come back to another meeting. It's really up to the commission. So.
Just one thing to add there. I think because of the way the agenda item is worded on the agenda, I think we do need to come back to the commission for recommendation onto the city council.
Right.
Right. Yeah, it's just direction. I agree. I think we're going to have one more review.
Okay, I messed up on the agenda, guys. I'm sorry.
Well, it sounds like we are getting some questions and comments from our commissioners this evening that they'd like us to evaluate a little bit more and bring information back to them. So
sounds good.
Correct.
To review before making a recommendation to council.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Correct. So you take those note of those items that the commissioners made and do some research on those items and bring them back so we can review them before recommending it.
Sounds good. So yeah, the enforcement mechanisms I have as notes, and then maybe do a little bit more research on the school issue. Was there anything else that the commission would like us to further research or identify?
No, I think to me, it was enforcement, multi-dimensional enforcement, whether it be through HOA. So just what will the mechanisms be for the enforcement and TDM, and then the schools issue.
Got it. Got it.
Perfect.
And then Vice Chair, I don't know if we took public comment on this. I don't know. That's up to you and the commission if you want to have public comment on this item.
We did not. Are there members of the public that would like to speak on this item?
There are only a couple people left from I can ask if you would like, Vice Chair.
Please, that would be great.
Okay. So I've got, I don't know, Finn Sparks, if you want to. Actually, he was one. Nope. Okay. And Salim, did you want to speak on this item?
No, thank you.
Okay, and then the last one was Ryan's iPhone. That's all it says. So Ryan's iPhone.
All right.
Oh, that's it. That's it, Vice Chair.
Okay, so we'll close this. We will move on from discussion item number 3. Staff is going to come back to us with some responses.
Yes, yes.
Okay, we're on to discussion number 4, which are agenda topics for our annual meeting with the City Council, Development Director, the City Council, and I believe a Development Director, Biggs, is going to make a report to us.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Doran. We do have, or you do have, a joint meeting with the City Council coming up that is slated for November the 2nd. This will be your second joint meeting of the year with the City Council. Your first one was back in February, and that meeting got delayed from, I guess it was earlier in 2020 due to the COVID pandemic. So what I have provided with the Commission this evening is the last list of topics that you brought to the City Council and was part of the request of topics that you would be taking a look at in the upcoming year. So I think tonight is an opportunity to see if you are still in support of this list, if there's modifications or additions to it that you'd like to make. And if there are, then we'll make those modifications and you'll be ready to meet with the City Council on November the 2nd. And you're one of, I believe, 5 commissions that will be meeting with the City Council that evening. And there are about a half-hour time slots that you get some face-to-face time with your council members and look over this list of projects for you to be working on in the year. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have or take direction on modifications to this list.
I don't have oh, Susan, go ahead. I'm sorry, you're muted.
One thing I'm just curious about, and I don't know if it fits with this or not, do you know what the City Council's plans are, or is it something we have input to in terms of doing something with leaving outdoor dining on the streets downtown?
Yes, the council, it's the outdoor dining that you see taking place downtown right now is being continued because it's part of the governor's continued COVID emergency declarations. And as long as that is going on, the council will allow that to continue. When that ends, there is supposed to be coming back to council an update or reconsideration of the adopted parklet program, which was adopted late in 2019, but really never went into effect because there was this, because of the pandemic, and this effort to provide outdoor dining spaces for restaurants to keep them viable during the pandemic when indoor dining was prohibited. So we're looking at, later, probably earlier next year, looking at the parklet program again and kind of evaluating what we've learned during this past year, what the original parklet program had in place, and what we think worked or didn't work with respect to allowing the occupancy of some on-street parking spaces.
Yeah, because it may not be the right time, but that's to me something that would be interesting, as you said, to see what worked, what didn't work, and is it something that should be considered in some form to be continued when we're out of the COVID emergency declaration.
Okay.
Right.
Just another thing is the city has, we're continuing our own local emergency declaration, and we renew it every 30 days. So that helps with our virtual meetings and some other things. So if the state changes, we still have our own emergency declaration to help assist us with our own needs about how we're dealing with the pandemic, like virtual meetings and stuff like that.
Sure. Any other commissioners have comment or input on our joint session?
Yeah, I had a few comments. I'll just go through. So I was looking at our last list. I think that, as much as I'd love to get rid of that story poll policy, but I don't know if that's possible. But I think that the housing element update, I think that the subcommittee, I just would love to kind of talk with the council and see if we can kind of work on that. I think that's going to be really important to have additional meetings, working with the consultants. 999 Fremont, that's something that, you know, I've been wanting to get the ball rolling on, but hopefully early next year. But just talking to them about the game plan for that, I think it would be important. And then the Affordable Housing Alliance said something about the downtown vision. They brought up an affordable housing development on one of the parking plazas.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, I'm not too familiar with that, but I think that would be something maybe to discuss with the council. But the main thing I think for me, priority one is just figuring out the housing element with the council and making sure that that gets all kind of figured out, and as well as 999 Fremont.
Great,
Yeah.
great, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Steinle or Commissioner Roche, anything to
Nothing
add?
to add.
No.
No, I don't have anything. Nope, I don't. Housing would obviously be something very important.
Yeah, I agree with Maris on the affordable housing, but as Susan brought up, you know, there's this split now between what the downtown vision plan was, what it may be because of now our outdoor dining parklets, and what it could be. And that's all actually related to something that we keep getting sent back, is the parking downtown. And I think it's all intertwined, and we should at least get some direction on, is the answer going to be no again on parking, so we need to move on? Or how are we going to arbitrage all these three together to implement a plan that works for the city post-COVID? So if you break those down, you know, parking, housing, and vision, but the vision plan definitely has got to be relooked at. Those are my suggestions.
Okay, good. Well, we have our list then, and we'll be ready for meeting with, you'll be ready for meeting with the council on the 2nd of November. We will keep you posted about specific times and other information, links and so forth.
Any hints on any of those would be greatly appreciated. So not to make light of that, but let's see. I'm sorry, I changed my agenda screen here. We are on topic number, I just lost my agenda screen, number 4, I believe. Oh, sure, Planning Director Biggs. We wanted to talk about what we're doing moving forward.
So on the horizon for the commission, your next meeting, October the 21st, we thought we were going to be bringing forward the 330 Distal Circle Affordable Housing Project to you. However, as a study session, however, that project doesn't appear to be ready for prime time and ready to be considered by you. So that'll probably be taking place at one of your meetings in November or December. At the City Council meeting on the 26th of October, they will be taking up the Packard Foundation parking lot. That's the one you made recommendations on at 374 2nd Street. Then you have your joint meeting with the City Council on November the 2nd. And for November the 18th, it looks like we have a couple of projects on First Street coming forward for 41st Street. This is a 4-story, 7-unit multifamily project with 1 level of parking. And then we also have a project at 355 First Street. This is another 4-story multifamily project, and the unit count in that project is 50 units. Another couple things to let the commission know about: on Tuesday, October the 19th from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. There's some implicit bias training that is open to all commissioners. I don't believe that it's mandatory training, but it is open if you'd like to attend and learn a deeper understanding about diversity. The city has hired an expert that'll be providing that training. And then on Friday, October the 22nd, I think it starts at 3:30 and runs until 5. And you should be getting an email about this from our city clerk's office. This is the annual training for commissioners that the city clerk's office puts on every year. And I believe our city attorney's office provides some information along with the city clerk's office on various things that you either are aware of or need reminders of serving as commissioners in the city. And I see Jolie waving her hand. Our city attorney wants to speak.
So, you know, I usually do the conflicts, the 500-foot rule, the 1,000-foot rule, the, you know, common law bias. It is, I guess, on this because we are considering future items. If you have something that you think Planning Commission needs training on, or commissions in general, I've been asking this to the other commissions, that you think that you need me to give some background or some training on stuff like, you know, motions or anything, email them to John Biggs or Guido, and they'll get them to me, because I'm just looking at, you know, things that maybe I'm not hitting on that maybe commissioners need extra training on. So just let me know. And, you know, I know the last year or two, we've been trying to keep up on the training on the new laws and SB 330 and all, and working with staff on training and the checklists and the, you know, compliance letters and stuff like that. So we have been doing a lot of training. As I think I mentioned a meeting or so ago, we did do training on SB 330 and the checklist with complete streets, because of SB 330, we will be having combined meetings with you. But anyway, if you have things that you want that may be applicable to commissions in general, and send your ideas to Guido or John, and I'm working on the PowerPoint now, so let me know.
I sure appreciate you sending out the latest and the clarifications on our involvement in social media relative to our appointed position. I thought that was really invaluable. It's just, I never even thought about those things. So thank you.
Oh, I probably should, I sent an email out on a new Brown Act case. And I don't know if you guys would be interested in that, about
sure
what gets to the board and when it gets to the board, and how can it be a Brown Act violation. So yeah, I can send those on to John, and John can send them out to you. But
I appreciate that.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And John, also, we also promised to do the new law training with the commission November 18th. So SB 8, 9, and 10. We're going to go over those with the Planning Commission. So
thank you.
Thanks.
And aren't we doing 8, 9, and 10 with DRC soon too?
Yes, November
2nd, I think.
Third,
third,
second.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so once you think you understand 330, then we're just going to throw another bunch of stuff at you. So it's very, very complicated. So
great. All right, it looks like we are at the end of our meeting. It's 8:53. I thought we were very efficient this evening. So I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn. Okay. Okay, I see that Commissioner Messenger has moved it under mute. I would be glad to second that. And we're adjourned. See you in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Good night.
Good night.
Night.